everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Spirit of Success. I'm your host, Yara, and on today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Mrs. Khotan Shahbazi-Harmon, a journalist, radio show host, founder, and CEO. Former host and executive producer of the multiple award-winning radio show Idea Lounge from 2006 to 2016, founder and CEO of the social innovation and transformational leadership counseling company Conscious Leadership Alliance, an active server of the community, Mrs. Shahbazi-Harmon's positive impact on the community has been and continues to be extensive. Welcome, Mrs. Shahbazi-Harmon. How are you today?
Hi, Yara, Joon. Thank you so much for having me. Gosh, it's so embarrassing to sit here and listen to all that stuff. So thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you for being here with us today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. On today's episode, we will be discussing careers related to journalism, radio, production, and community service. But before we go into the specifics of your career, we would love to know what got you interested in journalism, radio, production, and community service, and how did you get your start in each?
Wow, well, thank you. I think I've always loved questions. Questions have been something probably I love them a little bit too much. I'm always trying to understand what is happening, why is it happening, and what's beneath the surface? What is seeking to emerge that either the person is not talking about or the situation's offering and we're not seeing? So there's a first level of understanding, and then what's beyond that? So I was working in East Austin. I created a community MBA program in East Austin to experiment and see, can we help very low income clients get off of welfare through self-sufficiency, through entrepreneurship? So we got a job opportunity for a low income grant from Health and Human Services. And I worked with University of Texas in Austin and other professionals and created a wraparound service for very low income clients to help them get off of welfare. They started, 34 women started their own businesses, and it turned out really cool because they increased their income by almost $400,000, and then we brought about $500,000 to the local economy. So I went on the radio to talk about this. I was invited to go and talk about what's working. How can we do this? How can we ensure dignity and ensure the opportunity for work, the opportunity for access to funding for people to start their own businesses? And as I was on the radio being interviewed, during the break, the radio host said to me, you have a great radio voice. Have you ever thought about being on the radio? And I thought, what is this? So I went home, and as you know, Yara, I'm a Baha'i, and what I learned to do, it's as a strategy and a practice, is to move through prayers for solving problems. So what I do is I follow the 5 steps to solving a problem through prayer that has been attributed to Shobi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith. And, the 5 steps, I pulled it up here so I can review it with you. Pray and meditate about it, arrive at a decision, hold this, have determination to carry the decision, have faith and confidence that the power will flow through you, the right way will appear, the door will open, the right thought, the right message, the right principle, the right book will come to you. And then 5th step is act as though it has all been answered. So I went home and I said, Baha'u'llah, I don't know what this is. I'm not a journalist in that way. I said, if this is the path for me, please open the doors. I will do everything I can. And if the door opens, I will go through it. So I am not the person to do a cost-benefit analysis for decisions that I have prayed about and I have gotten guidance on. If the guidance comes, I move. And I thought, okay, because that's all I know, Yaraju. That's it. That's my big strategy. And so the door opened, and I actually went, there was a call, orientation for anyone who wants to be trained to be on this radio station. I said, okay. So I showed up. Would you believe it? I sat next to this person and she turned around to me and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I am here to see if I can be on the radio." And she looked at me, she says, "Don't think just because you're here that you're going to be able to get on the radio. It's taken me years and years." And I looked at her and I thought, I don't know if you know what you're dealing with here, because I've prayed about this. And if the doors are open, if the doors are opening, I'm going through. And I was on the radio, and then 10 years later and a couple of awards later. So I learned by doing. I had that slot. I started doing interviews and I prayed the heck out of it. And the secret also is that I really love to learn and read. So I wanted to interview the people that I was interested in. I wanted to learn from them. So I would read books and then I would reach out and I would interview folks. So that's how that's my start. So I haven't shared that story with too many people. So you get an exclusive, Yara.
Well, our audience, I'm sure, is super excited to hear all of that, and what a spiritually endowed path to both careers and where they ended up. That's amazing. And so, along that same idea, what was your inspiration for your radio show Idea Lounge? And can you tell us more about your experience like on the show and conducting interviews?
Absolutely. So, Abdu'l-Baha talks about intuitive knowledge. And Abdu'l-Baha is the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith. And there's a very interesting teaching that he teaches us, that servitude is the highest station that you can achieve. And it's just such a complex idea in a world that is so hung up on power as being influence and control. So I was trying to figure out, what does Abdu'l-Baha mean by that as I started this service? And I realized, oh my goodness, so if I think about a mountain, so my current thinking then was, if I want to be powerful, I want to climb this mountain and be on top of the mountain, right? But then everything flows down mountain. I'm like, oh my goodness, water flows down. If you release something, it goes down. It's very strange. It's the exact opposite of what I was thinking. So if everything flows down, where do you want to be? You want to be up on top, or you want to be down at the foot of the mountain? So that's my own limited way of trying to understand this riddle, this enigma, that if you want to have the most power, you want to be in the most element of service, and you have to let go of your ego. So that was the genesis of the radio show. So I was experimenting, trying to be of most service so that whatever I was sharing would have some power to change and influence the hearts. And the other was to try to be intuitive, or awaken the intuitive power within myself. And something very interesting happened as I began to let go of trying to control the interviews. So I did 10 years of interviews every week, every Thursday, live. So that's a lot of interviews over the years. And it was exactly the experience that was replicated for a decade, which was praying, going in, sitting there live, having the headphones on, having the microphone like the one that you have in front of you, and then just letting go, and then connecting, like being the trunk of a tree and then having branches everywhere, like energetically just being out there. I would do my research. I would read the book. I would read the book as if I am defending it, like a thesis. So I knew everything about the book. I would know everything. I would watch, listen to all the interviews that the person had done before. So I would really do my research. I would read anything they had written. And then I would have anywhere from 5 to 10 pages of notes going there in front of me, have everything there, the book marked up, highlighted, section, everything in front of me. And then I would let go. I would just let go, and then allow the spirit to guide me. And because I knew the material, I could go everywhere, anywhere they were going. And then I realized it's not about what I know. I know what I know. I want to know what they know. So how do I create the space, hold the space, and then allow what is seeking to emerge, what's trying to come through, and then listen. Listen very deeply. Listen with my ears, listen with my mind, listen with my heart, listen with my gut, see if there are any red flags, listen with my spirit for the biggest and largest message that's trying to come through, that's trying to influence and change our world. And then really love the process and love the people and hold this space for them. So it was pretty neat. I mean, stuff that came through was really cool. I know you were mentioning what came out of the interviews. We got two Gracie Awards for Outstanding Interview Program. One was for an interview with Dr. Shirin Ebadi. And she is, of course, the Nobel Peace Prize winner from Iran, a human rights lawyer. And then another interview with Isabel Wilkerson. She wrote a book, The Warmth of Other Suns, which is about the largest mass migration of the 20th century that we've never really talked about, which is over 10 million African Americans migrating out of the South between World War I and then the passing of the Civil Rights Act, coming out of the South and going to the North and the West. And so it was fascinating.
Wow, what amazing interviews and experiences. And the metaphor that you gave in the beginning, the way to think about what makes service really such a powerful position to be in. And that's a very lovely way to think about it. And the way you mapped it out makes it very clear, I think. And as you mentioned, among your experiences as a successful journalist and the other awards that you've received and recognition that you've received, you have won the two prestigious Gracie Awards. And you talked with us a little bit about what those interviews were like, which is very magical and very intense experiences. But can you also tell us a little bit about what it was like receiving the awards and kind of what went into that?
So my husband, Wade, and I traveled. We were invited to go to Los Angeles. The first time I went, I was so bright and bushy-tailed, and I had my dress, and it was just gorgeous, and I had it sized, and makeup, and I don't wear makeup usually, and get my hair done, nails done. I was just super excited, and I get there, and I realized, oh my goodness, if I had tied my work to desire for recognition, I would have been so disappointed. But in terms of speaking about the reality of it, what the work is, it became an honor that I'm very, very grateful for.
Wow, it's so cool. And I think you touched on a point that leads us once again into our next question is how have you made service and serving the community into a career and profession?
I don't know if I made it into a career profession, but it certainly informs everything I do. Like, not that, oh gosh, not like someone looking at me saying, oh, she's being of service. It's the intention of the energy of it, right? So, and it goes hand in hand with sacrifice. There is a very interesting quote, I like to just read it, where it says, until a being setteth his foot on the plane of sacrifice, he's bereft of every favor and grace. The challenge is that we think of sacrifice as giving something that we really, really, really want for something that we really, really don't want. That's the challenge of sacrifice. We think about it. We never think about it. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's giving something that we think we really want for something that we never thought about. So we have to be able to submit to the process. If we want to be of service, we have to submit to the process. It is also like if you are pulling the blinds or opening the curtains. I heard this from Mr. Hooper Dunbar. It's just such a beautiful analogy that stayed with me. He says that tests and difficulties and sacrifice is like God is just opening the curtain slowly, and all of a sudden you go into agitation because you realize, where did all this dust come from? I've never seen all this dust and disarray. And then you think everything is bad because you begin to see what the challenges are, where the problems are. So then you start cleaning up a little bit, and then he pulls the curtain back a little bit more. There's more light, illumination that comes into your reality, and you're like, oh my God, I really don't want to look at this. I thought I had taken care of this. And what you realize is that it is degrees, continuous degrees towards perfection, which we'll never achieve, thank God, because the process of it is what is making us more perfect, not arrival there. Remember what I was saying? Thank goodness I wasn't thinking I want to get awards. I was more concerned about the work. So the work is also the same thing. So the work that I do now, most recently, I have for the past 4 years, since 2016, I've been serving on the Austin Mayor's Task Force for Institutional Racism, Systemic Inequities. So we've been looking at intersectionalities of race, how it affects education, finance and banking, housing, healthcare, and also justice and policing and all of that. So we're looking at how do we create a beloved community where everyone wants to be a part of. And that justice, the Baha'u'llah says, this is the day of justice. So putting that into practice, what does that look like? If this is a day of justice, how does it look like in our communities, in our institutions, with us individually, in our faith communities, in our families, in our marriages? How does justice manifest itself? So right now, the work that we did, we submitted a report to the mayor, over 200 recommendations. I was overseeing the education working group, everything from pre-K to higher ed to workforce, to make sure to look at institutional racism, systemic inequities within that. And then we had an implementation plan that came from that. And this was over 50 people in Austin from all levels of the community. And just most recently, we just launched the creation of a nonprofit that will take those 200 plus recommendations and operationalize them through commitment, through funding and resources. And that nonprofit is called the Central Texas Collective for Racial Equity. So that work is on. So there's been a lot of work like that, unlike the work I've done in East Austin with helping those women get off of welfare, looking at things like creating a campaign for flu immunizations in schools in Central Texas to help reduce absenteeism. And we have there's been, in terms of impact, there are dollars and numbers associated with all of that.
Yeah, no, I think like with all the experiences that you've mentioned and shared with us, it really shows that when you have a passion for service and you are wondering, how can you mix that into a career? It is possible when you try to find the way for it and it all comes to you. So that's amazing to hear. And I'm sure it's very inspiring for all of us, whether that is your aim for your career, and even more so for those people whose aim is to make their service work into a career. Um, and so, kind of a more general question from what you talked about service, but how do you think one can measure the impact of their service?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I think I have some thoughts, but I don't know exactly, because it depends on what kind of problems you're trying to solve. Are you trying to solve technical problems? Are you trying to solve adaptive problems? Are you trying to solve big, 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 hairy, complex problems in a volatile, uncertain, complex environment? Those results and how you measure them are very different. So I would say maybe one way to look at it is movement. Is there any movement in any direction, or valence, as they say technically, up or down? So is it moving? So if you are trying to solve, let's say, whatever your passion is, let's say your passion, Yara, Joon, is interviewing. You want to create a media company that is of service to the world. Okay, then you need to figure out what is it, first, how do you want to align it with the values that you hold? What are the values? Is it justice? Is it mercy? Is it knowledge? What is it, right? And then what are the strategies that will help you get there? So if it is, so let me just ask you, just give me one idea. What's one idea you want to have for this show that you're doing?
Well, one thing I definitely want to have for this show, and that has been consistent with what we've been talking about, is to show the impact of combining one's career with service and how making them part of one's life really makes the difference.
Yes. So incorporating service in everything you do in all your life, right?
Yeah.
So then the strategies might be, well, first you got to figure out what is service. What is it and what isn't it? What it is not. Then how do you know when you are of service? How do you know when you're not of service, right? You want to identify all of that. And then figure out what are the strategies to be more of, do more of this, more of service and less of this. Because there are strategies for doing less of, right? When you want to be healthy, you eat less sugar, you eat more healthy food. That's what I mean by that, right? And then who would like to be engaged in this work with you? Is this for youth? Is this for everyone? Is it for families? And then you have a system of how you deliver the message in a way that makes a difference to them. So that means you are co-creating what the results are, what you are measuring, what the impact is. The challenge, and I've been in economic development as well, is that we need to co-create solutions with those that we think we are serving. They are not empty vessels to be filled by us, by our knowledge, by our expertise. They are our clients that we are here to serve. We're absolutely here to serve them. And the intention of service has to be there. We cannot be so attached to the impact and results that we forget why we're serving and how we're serving. And we can't be, so a couple of things I would say when if anyone wants to incorporate service, I mean, this is something that I struggle with, and I hope that this is something that could be of value to others. So I don't know if this is an answer, is not to be in love with the problem. Because sometimes we become so in love with the problem and so enamored by it and our ability to do data-driven decision making and gather all the facts, and we're studying, and we don't take any real action. So for example, let me just give you an example to show how service might work in solving a problem. So let's say that we are looking at inequities in education in Austin. So we're looking at data, how are that, and then disaggregating the data, looking at white students, Asian students, Hispanic students, African-American students, right? And then we're looking at it. And when you're telling that story and you're showing the disparities, if you keep telling the stories, using the data, showing the disparities, you may actually reinforce the disparities because you're saying these are facts. Data is just a snapshot. It's not, these are not facts. This is just to give us a sense of what's currently happening so we know what to do to change it. That's one thing. Second is that you can, if you in a lake, you see a fish dead at the side of the lake on the shore, you actually look at the fish. You're like, what's wrong with this fish? Why isn't it not doing well? Right? You examine the fish. You see two fish, you maybe examine the fish, but if you see more than two fish, you better start examining the lake. There's something wrong with the environment that is not suited to nurturing and growth and thriving for the fish. So this is what I'm trying to say. So it's one thing to say, I want to be of service. I want to bring all of my love into the work. We have to also be very data-driven, use our mind, study, and then act.
What wonderful advice. And I think those are very key components, like you mentioned, of what goes into measuring one's impact and being able to make an impact and going down that process, and maybe not always being so focused on, will this have that end result that I'm thinking of, or planning everything to go towards the end result you're thinking of. Because I think one thing I've noticed through my own experiences, and I think that we see in general, is sometimes when we have an idea for what the impact is, we try to put everything into that box to make it go towards that impact, instead of sometimes seeing what is the impact that this is going towards. Maybe it is serving a bigger impact, or maybe really where your project is going or your service is going is to where the impact needs to be made versus where you thought the impact needed to be made.
Yes.
So with that spirit of being able to, I guess, kind of handle the problem and go through that process of learning and service, you created the Conscious Leadership Alliance, which we kind of talked about in the beginning in the introduction. But can you tell us a bit more about what inspired you to finally make a company that counsels people how to do innovative leadership and kind of go into that realm of solving problems, and a bit about what the organization does.
Yes, thank you. So I think everything that I've done has sort of led to this point. I was working with an organization on data-driven decision making in Central Texas when it came to social issues, in particular looking at education and health and disparities and the intersectionality. And after I stopped working with them, it was so interesting. My first client came through like the day after I ended, end of October. My first client started in November. And what I'm realizing is that it's the same work. It's all the same work. It's all around knowledge. It's all about our intentions, our character, our knowledge, and our action. So what I do is the organization advises. So I serve as an advisor, as a trainer, as a coach, as a thought partner for people, help them think through a very volatile, uncertain, complex systems of how to go through with the planning. How does this affect the individual? How does it affect their community, their organization, and system? So we are always thinking and working in systems. And what are the qualities? What are the requirements? How do we plan for it? How do we execute it? And then how do we measure it? So it's a whole system around how to really, for organizations to flourish and for organizations to work in unity and diversity at its heart, but also to have real results and impacts that we're counting in dollars and movement.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful. I work both in the nonprofit as well as for-profit, and then there is that sort of gray in between area that's developing now that's really exciting too. So everything from innovation, everything from working with teams, senior leaders. It's just been great fun. It's been great fun. And it's all word of mouth, which is wonderful. I am on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to connect, I'm happy to help them.
What a wonderful initiative, and I think a very useful and needed initiative for many of us. And so, through all of this amazing work that you've done and the experiences you've had in your various fields over your career, how do you define success and how has this definition evolved?
Oh my goodness, that I don't know. Success. I don't know how to answer that because I think I want to be able to stay connected as much as possible to my source of inspiration, of guidance, of protection. I want to um, I want to be able to grow to the next level, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. I know as the curtain keeps getting pulled back and I see all the dust and the disarray of what I thought was a very well ordered life, I want to have the wherewithal, the patience and grace not to be despondent and despair, but to change in the right way. Gosh, I'm getting emotional. I don't know why.
Oh,
And so I think that I'm excited that the next generation is doing what it's doing. So you, Yara June, and others, my hope for you and the generation that's coming is that you become spiritual, visionary problem solvers, deeply spiritual, deeply visionary, meta level, systems level problem solvers, because you are given the knowledge and it's coming fast. There's a torrent of knowledge. How are you going to process this continuous flow of information, which is not all knowledge, but there's lots of information? How can you listen? Listen for the signal of truth, then find it in yourself, connect, plug in the lamp, get the illumination, and then direct that illumination towards the work that needs to happen and empower yourself and others to solve some of these big, hairy challenges and problems in a world that is rapidly changing. That's what my hope is for you and your generation.
well, thank you. And I think, like you mentioned in your own definition, kind of what success is, or at least what it has been so far and what it will continue to be, is that a big part of success, and what we've been seeing is that it is growth. And maybe, as we explore this concept more on this show and from your wonderful experiences, we hear that, a big part of what makes someone successful or what contributes to what we think success is, even for our own definitions, is that being able to continually grow and continue to take what we have experienced and what has been success for us thus far to keep growing it and continue being better. So I love hearing that, and it's very inspiring. Um, and so, what do you think is the role of youth in today's society? You kind of touched on that, but
I think that the youth have been incredibly important. So with, I'm going to now quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And the youth today, God bless, I don't know how you all are handling the torrent of information coming through, the guidance that is pouring in. Things are falling apart because they're not aligning with what they're supposed to be. And here you all are trying to figure out, who am I? What do I want to do? How do I want to be of service? How do I know I'm going to be successful? How do I even know what I want to do? Don't do cost benefit analysis all the time. If the guidance comes and it feels like guidance, and the more practice you have, the more you know it's the guidance, move. Don't wait. Don't wait at all, because the world is now waiting. Things are changing so rapidly. So being continuous learning, true knowledge, not for the A, but for the mastery of the topic. So then you can become a tool of service,
right.
right? And then use that to align it with your belief system of how you can be of service. Pray, trust. Trust is very hard for the youth right now. I understand. I mean, look at the world we're in right now, but trust it. I guarantee, if you need a guarantee from me, Yara, Joon, and the youth listening, it works. Prayer works. The process works. Trust works. Service works. I guarantee it. And it is your mirror. Keep shining, polishing your mirror of your soul, and then turn it towards the light, and then reflect that light into the world. That's our work right now.
No,
Okay.
exactly. And this growth of spirituality, whatever that means for each and every one of you, whether it's self-reflection or it's praying, as long as we all do it together and we're all able to grow from it and help one another and nurture that, I think, like you mentioned, it'll be a beautiful world. And what a better example, one of the beautiful examples in our society that we see that service has worked and that it continues to work. So, what a wonderful way to come towards the end of our show. And before our episode ends for today, do you have any additional words of encouragement and advice you would like to share with our audience?
Oh, goodness. Let's pray for each other. Let's be of service. Let's laugh and be joyful. It's just like, um, my grandmother used to say, she's 103 years old and we love her so much. And one thing she would always instill in us, grandchildren and great grandchildren, was you can either be an example or a cautionary tale. So choose which one you want to be. So the opportunities that are available right now are astonishing. They are astonishing. Anyone who wants to be of service, who lives in a neighborhood, is part of a community, is part of a family, has connections to the internet, can be of service. Every single person, every single person. So it's not, we shouldn't confuse service with doing big, grandiose things, because what may matter is not what we think matters. What may actually matter, let's investigate that. Let's independently investigate the truth of what is it that actually matters, what has value, so that we can align our values with what has value, and then hit the ground running. The time is short. There is no time to wait anymore, because we're all confused and we're all exhausted, and with everything that's going on and uncertain. And it's true. I agree. We're all there. I understand. But something happens when we are connected to our spirit, and our spirit is connected to the source. So I ask for everyone's prayers. I send everyone love, and I give you so much gratitude, Yara Joon. I am so proud of you. This is so lovely. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you very much for being here today. And what a wonderful way to end the show with such beautiful advice and the love that you're radiating to all of us, whether it's from the screen or for those of our audience listening via podcast, is being received, I am very sure. So thank you for your insight and advice today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And be sure to follow Mrs. Shahbazi-Harmon on Facebook. And to contact her with questions or inquiries, visit her LinkedIn page. And as always, thank you all for listening. Be sure to be subscribed to the podcast's YouTube channel and SoundCloud page, both under the Spirit of Success, and follow us on Facebook at spirit-of.success9 and Instagram at spirit-of.success to get the latest updates about new episodes, announcements, and to participate in the show by asking questions that you would like us to consider to talk about in upcoming episodes. Until next time, I'm your host, Yara, and don't forget to continue challenging yourself and working to make your spirit soar to new heights. Bye!